Okay, I
And
think
we're
we are live.
live.
Yes. Okay, so welcome everyone to Small Talks. And today is gonna be an episode where I think I'll have to take a lot of notes myself. So I'm super excited for this one. And today we have Vanshika. I think for a lot of LinkedIn audience, if you don't know Vanshika, I don't know what you're doing on LinkedIn. But just to give some context, Vanshika is currently founder of the Fingerprint Labs, and she has worked with like a good number of D2C brands, close to 150 plus. And we're gonna talk a lot today about what is a brand and how to go about building a brand. And for people tuning in for the first time at Small Talks, my name is Jay. Krishna is my co-host, and we talk to business athletes, who do interesting stuff across different domains. And the goal of this conversation is actually nothing but just to figure out, like, how people have done stuff and what can people aspiring to do certain stuff like them can pick up from their journey and apply in their own context. So we do like talk a lot of like stuff which can help people to do certain things like the other people who have done better, like, in fact. So with that, Vanshika, I would just like to give it to you, like, intro for all of us, and how you got into the brand side of things, and the early days of your career, and if you could just like give a quick walkthrough of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very big question to answer, but let me try and summarize it the best that I can. Let's start with two ironies. First things first, I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I always thought that there was a lot of work and it was not fun, and I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I grew up in a business family and was just like something I've seen, I've grown up with. So I'm like, ये नहीं करना है. You know how kids are like, जो मेरे पापा करते कभी मेरे को नहीं करना है. So same story. Second thing is I went to college to study accounting. Pretty soon I realized that accounting was quite boring and I'd be stuck in a cubicle not talking to people, and I was like, ये तो नहीं करना है. And I think around my second or third semester I shifted into marketing. Fast forward a couple of years, I graduated with an undergrad in marketing and management. I stayed in the US till 2018. Then I moved to India. I moved to India, and it's the third country I'm living in, but it was almost like a life hit a reset. I've never lived in India before, surprisingly, because I was born and brought up in Dubai. So I've never really lived in India. India was always a holiday home. And moved here and realized I was like, shit, I have no friends. And so I jumped on LinkedIn and tried to see if there were any alumni or anybody interesting. Started networking with the same message. "Okay, I'm new here. I need friends. I have no friends. Can you please talk to me?" And that's really how the journey began. And I think the next major life changing moment happened when I met my mentor Saurabh. Um, we were sitting at coffee randomly one day in Galleria in Gurgaon, and he was like, and I was just telling him like, and this is like end of 2019ish, and I was like, I'm doing a lot of stuff, but I'm not enjoying or not doing the most that I can. There's something missing, right? And like that something missing was bothering me so much. And he was like, quit it and start your own consultancy. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? Have you lost your mind? Like, you don't just leave a comfy job and start consulting in a new country, literally 1.5 years after you moved here, where you know nobody and you just started to get to know people. Um, I don't know what happened. Something clicked, and I was like, "Okay, done. Let's do it." And 2020, I quit my job and I started consulting. And it was a hard shift, right? Because you have to shift a lot of gears when you move from full time to consulting, and your mindset and a lot of things change, right? So it was like a very big change for me, and um, I think at that point it seemed like everything was going wrong, and then there was just so much stuff to do, and I didn't understand everything. But I think because I'm a person who likes to figure things out for myself, like I think the process was hard, but it was equally fun, and I really enjoyed it. And 2020 is when I started. I did a bunch of consulting in the marketing communication space, in the storytelling space, in brand comms, which was always my forte, right? So I did brand comms, for example, for a brand called Jupiter Money, which I'm sure we've all heard of, the neobank. Their social media for the first about 3 to 6 months was handled by us. And then there was AirMeet, which is a virtual meeting thing for companies. So I did a bunch of very cool kind of consultancy. Heads Up for Tails was my client, and so it sort of just kept compounding into something bigger. And then as I kept meeting Saurabh, as kept meeting him, he kept asking me the question, "तो खुश है ना?" मैंने बोला, "हाँ, मैं बहुत खुश हूँ, मैं बहुत खुश हूँ." So the next jump from like quit your job to start consultancy, the next jump which he made me do was, "चल GST कर ले, register करवा ले अपनी company." And I'm like, "क्या बोल रहे हो? How can this happen so quickly? It's barely been a year and a half, 2 years." And he was like, "करना तो पड़ेगा." And I was like, "हाँ, ऐसे करना तो पड़ेगा कभी ना कभी." So then I registered TFL in 2022, and now we're sitting in 2025, and it's really just been such an amazing journey. I can't even like put it into words. It leaves me speechless. It leaves me in wonderment of like what have I done. कभी कभी लगता है कि मैंने क्या किया है और कभी कभी लगता है कि भाई देखो मैंने क्या किया है. But I can't complain. I think it's been a journey, and it's still a journey that I'm on. I never feel like I know enough. I never feel like I've done enough. So even though the achievements and the milestones have started adding up, and my house is filled with certificates and stuff that I've gotten from events, but I still feel like this is so much more to do. And I was chatting with my mom a couple of months ago, and I was like, I don't think I could have done this anywhere else but India. India is really the land of opportunities, and I think it's given me the platform to make this decision, stick on my decision, continue with this decision, and I really can't complain. I've got to meet such amazing people like you, Krishna, Jay. I've got to meet so many amazing founder friends. I mean, it's just become like it's almost like I don't know what my first home or second home was. This has now become my third home. When I came, I was always doubtful if I'll be able to adjust and will things be okay. But now I'm like pretty confident. Like it's been good, it will be good, and it's only going to get better.
That's
No, it's
super.
like how you've kind of given that story, but I think that's also part of what you do, right? The brand story. So I think you're depicting that in your own brand as well. So that's a good start.
Yeah,
Vanshika, one
thanks.
interesting point which you mentioned in your bio is that you've seen three countries, right? Like you were in UAE, then you moved to the States, and then you came to India, right? So that means while growing up or in your mid years and now, you've seen three different cultures brand wise, right? If you could kind of give us some light on how cultures were impacting the brand stories, that would be like an amazing start to this conversation today.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something that I've been thinking about because, I obviously want to do more work within India and outside. So this is definitely something I've been thinking about. And I think each of the cultures is very different. Like, I think I mean, even the mindset of the people, the things that they're expecting from brands, the kind of innovation happening. I think there are definitely three levels, right? And I think there are three levels mainly because the support system, right? Like, I think in some countries, the support for startups and starting up and making the jump from zero to one is much easier, much faster. Second, like, I think innovation is at three different scales, right? Like, I think like it's almost like US is the West, India's in the middle, and UAE, if you have to think about it, was in the East, right? So like I think Dubai is a good amalgamation of like India and the US. India is a very unique place. I mean, particularly when I talk about it to founders, um, so many founders, for example, are building for India, right? And when they say building for India, I ask them what India, and then they're like, what do you mean by what India? And I'm like, there are two or three very different Indias within our India, right? Like there is tier one, there's the say the Gurgaon, Bombay, Bangalore. Their mindset is completely different. Then we have like the tier two who are like upcoming, so like somewhere like an Indore, Chennai, Coimbatore, like these kind of places. Those are still up and coming, and they are very supportive of this startup ecosystem, and they want startups to come out of there, and you can see that buzz of energy in those cities. And then you have like the rural and the upcoming, right, like the tier 3 cities and below, and they're solving for very different, like the founders are solving for very different issues over there. Like There are so many fintech solutions, loan solutions, housing, agri-tech, so like that's when I ask founders, I'm like, which India are you building for? It's a very interesting question to hear what they have to say, because just tier one is not India, right? It's not representative of the diversity that we have here. I think similarly in the US, right? I think in the US and Dubai, like the difference between, like, say, the richest person and the up and coming segment of industry, like up and coming segment of people, like the difference is not that large. In India, the difference is very large, very, very large. Like I live very close to camellias, magnolias, right? And the houses there are like 50 crores, 60 crores. And I'm like, what do these people do to get 50 crores to buy a house? I mean, like, that's a whole different India, and that's like literally right across the road. I joke around with people, and I'm like, yeah, they're my neighbors. Like, these high tech founders, they're my neighbors. And they're like, what? You live in these places? I'm like, do I look like I have 50, 60 crores to spend? Like, like when I say neighbors, I don't mean literally my neighbors, but there's a lot of creativity, there's a lot of entrepreneurship, there's a lot of excitement about entrepreneurship in India, particularly. And uh, one of the reasons that I particularly enjoy talking so much, I either love going and sharing knowledge with people, be it at universities, be it at workplaces, be it at colleges. So I really enjoy that because I feel like there's just so much to learn. And the people that you meet, I think, give you that learning experience, in terms of where they've come from, what are they aspiring to do with their brand, how are they building their brands. Um, I think it's just every single founder I talk to has a very interesting POV of their own, which I really respect and I value. Because if we didn't have differentiated opinions, we'll all be very homogenous and not be doing something that is very unique or very creative or very different. So I think India is a case study itself. Even if we forget the other two countries that I've lived at, India is a beautiful case study of how brands are coming up, what founders are doing, how are founders solving unmet needs, right? And that is the kind of first question that we have to ask founders as brand people, is like, what is the unmet need that you're trying to fulfill? And it's really interesting to hear and see, So we've built a fintech for tier two, tier three, in terms of their brand strategy, their visual design, their story. We've done, stuff for very different kinds of projects. And I think that's the beauty of just being in India. And when I really was talking to my mom, I really meant that, that India's given me the opportunity to explore and learn and broaden my horizons so much. I don't think I would have gotten this opportunity anywhere else. Like, I think that's just the beauty of having such a big, diverse, beautiful country.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Just had a follow up on Vanchika, what you were just saying, right? The journey of storytelling in brands has changed intensively. Like, I can't even like put a math around it, right? Previously, jingles were kind of a thing, right? Like washing powder Nirma. I'm sure, like, as soon as I say this, both of you would be kind of already singing that song in your mind, right? It's that kind of brand recall value to present day where brands are making so many ads because the time frame for which the ad is now working is, I think, not even one tenth of that period, right? I wanted
Yeah,
you to help
agreed.
us understand how this journey has kind of evolved, right? And in today's method, why is this working more than what was working previously?
Yeah, very interestingly, I was thinking of making a reel on this exact topic. Just today, I was actually going to film it in a bit, but let me share. So basically, okay, let me tell you, let's start with the beginning, right? Consumers are going to be on 10 different channels, right? That is now a reality. It's no longer like, oh, I think my consumer is here and not here. Your consumer is going to be on 10 different channels. Previously, what used to happen was there were not so many ways for consumers to interact and engage with brands. There's probably TV, radio, billboards, events, right? So it was very limited. Now the marketing mix has gotten so wide that brands that are succeeding have actually done something very interesting, and that is called information asymmetry, right? That is the exact terminology for it, which basically means that on any channel at any point where your consumer is going to see or interact or engage with your brand, You have to be saying something that is related to your brand so that they build recall, love, and then, memory of your brand. Now that comes with the understanding of what is my brand really wanting to say, right? Because the biggest problem and the easiest thing to do at the same time is to have a brand that stands for nothing, because you just want to keep saying something, but that something is not of value to the audience, or it's not helping the audience to make a decision of why they should prefer your brand or not. Every piece of your communication, irrespective of what channel you put it on now, and given that there are probably like 20 channels now, right? For example, your consumers feed is cluttered, and every post needs to either remind them of the product, build preference, build love, build loyalty, build trust. So there are obviously 4 5 things that every brand needs to do. Now, to do information asymmetry properly, right, they need to have brand pillars, that these are the things that my brand wants to say, these are the things my brand stands for, these are my unique differentiators, these are my things that my audience knows that they have a problem about, but they haven't been able to find the solution for. Right, till you really get into the depths of brand strategy and storytelling and communication, your channel feeds, irrespective of what you're doing, you could be putting out 100 pieces of content, it's not going to help you to build loyalty, it's not going to help you to build preference, it's not going to help you to build trust. Because if your thing is just like, oh yeah, we're going to skip brand and we're just going to go to a social media agency and ask them to go ahead and start creating our social media, what's going to happen is they're going to, number one, let's take it with a pinch of salt, you're a line item in their day to day, right? They're dealing with 30 clients. When they're doing that, right, every agency, every small or medium or whatever agency, right, they only have a set number of people on your particular project. That same person is doing 10 other projects. So you, at the end of the day, have to think of yourself as a line item. If you don't have the strategy yourself about what your brand really stands for, what is my brand ethos, what is my brand's purpose, the social media agency is going to say कि हाँ हम content तो डाल सकते हैं, and every agency will promise you the moon and the stars, because doing content is easy, but doing meaningful, impactful, trust building content is not easy. That is where the challenge comes, because founders realize very late that, oh, हमने तो social media किया है, but our social media to website conversion or sale is not that high. That means we're doing something wrong. And by the time they've done that, right, and they realize that they need to get a fix in place, it's already too late, because what has already happened in that meantime is your consumer already in their mind has an image of what your brand is, thinks of what the brand value is that they're getting, and if they like it or not, right? Say a brand has been around for a year or two. By then, even if you hear of the name or see the name or you see the social media, you'll be like, ha, ye theek brand hai. And it could be a great brand. But the problem is the perception in your mind has been set so low that now fixing it is going to be a huge challenge, which is why we tell every single founder that comes our way, you need to do your brand before you start even thinking about your content, your social media, your storytelling, your website. You need to think of brand, because without a brand these days, there is no reason why a customer should prefer you, because they've already given their share of wallet to a competitor of yours in that particular thing that they were looking for. Why should they change? Because to change, it's a very big step, right? Like, imagine tomorrow somebody says कि घर से Clorox निकाल दो, कुछ और आया है. You've been using Clorox for 30 years, right? Like, you'll be like, why do I need to change? There's always that hesitation to change. So brand evolutions, brand revamps, brand redos, those are very, very hard for the brand side, because you need to really understand what the evolved customer is. Then on the customer side, to kind of convince them that, hey, we are not a new brand, we're 30 years old, but we've rebranded and this is why you should trust us, right? So it's very, very easy, and it is actually 100% recommended to do your brand strategy before you start doing anything with the customer facing.
Yeah. So, Vanshika, I have a question which is little counter to this, right? So, since you speak to a lot of founder on day-to-day basis, right, for the work or otherwise also, if you can mention maybe two, three pitfalls, right, somebody should avoid at a strategic level while thinking of their brand, or people are very much confused, brand, marketing, this, that. How would you just advise somebody to just miss like this, avoid this two, three pitfalls?
Yeah. number one, ask yourself, do I really know the customer? Who is my customer? What is their day in the life look like? Right? If you're unable to answer that as a founder, you definitely are doing something wrong. Second thing is, what is their unmet need and what is the solution that they're using right now? Because those are your two tickers. Unmet need means what is the problem that they have? Who is their closest competitor or who's your closest competitor? Will tell you what is the nearest alternative that people are using to you and who you have to fight down, right? And the third thing is, the third thing that I go back to again and again is preference and loyalty. So the question is, why you, right? What are you bringing to the table? And unfortunately, brand cannot sell a blah product, right? Just because you have great branding, say you spend 20 lakhs on branding, but your product is not really different, innovative, there's no real value to be derived from it. I, as a brand strategist, cannot deep dive into your product and be like, इसके बारे में बात करो, because if there is no real substance behind your brand, then I can't really push anything, right? So I think if you ask yourself these three questions, it'll really help to kind of put you on the right path, with who is my customer, what is their unmet need, and who is their alternative. And third, what is why me? Why should I be preferred over somebody else? And
Right.
this has to be not answered by the people sitting in the boardroom. This has to be answered by your customers. Because people sitting in the boardroom, say for example, Jay, you, Neet, Krishna, you and I, we're all sitting in a room where the CMOs, CEOs, CFOs, whatever of the brand, the biggest problem that is happening nowadays with brand, right, specifically, is that there is a lot of myopia around what is the reality versus what is the reality presented in the boardroom. You are not in the boardroom to please the next person sitting next to you if you're building a brand. If your customer is not happy, not satisfied, if you feel internally that I would not recommend this to my friend, then don't launch, don't do that thing. Because I think a lot of times what is happening now, and I'm seeing a lot of campaigns, a lot of great things happening, but they seem so far from the brand, right? Like, and then I question myself, I'm like, who let this pass in the boardroom? Who was the one who was trying to get pleased with this campaign? किसने हाँ बोला, मतलब जिस देखने हाँ कि अच्छा लग रहा है, ये अच्छा लग रहा है. But is this really what your customer wants or not? If this is what they don't care about, or like maybe they'll just watch it once or twice and forget it, then was it even worth all the hassle and the effort? Right? So I think a lot of questions need to be asked before any pitfalls and answers. And I think when you start asking yourself these reality check type questions, right, that is really when you figure out, are you doing the right thing or are you not? Because brand and brand building is not a one day task. It's going to take 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, right? And unfortunately, nowadays, the biggest problem that we're having is, I think that a lot of people think throw money at the problem and the brand will get built. And those who know what I'm talking about know what I'm talking about. But that is really not how you build trust, loyalty, retention, right? That channel and those channels that they are using, they're great for numbers, right? Oh wow, we sold 50,000 products yesterday. How many of them actually came back and bought from you 1 month later? Right? So these kind of things are the reality checks that founders need to really understand that, okay, I'm spending say 5 lakhs a month. Say for example, I'm spending 5 lakhs a month. What is my ROI? How am I retaining them? How am I talking to them? What are my channels? Am I emailing them? Do I have what sort of data do I have? Right? So I think reality check questions are not what founders like. But I think for me, as a founder of TFL and somebody who's really vested in helping founders succeed, and in all my first conversations, I tell all the founders that I'm a founder first person. I'm not doing this so that I can make money and my agency can be like, oh my God, we did 300 projects, right? I'm doing this for you. Your brand needs to succeed. And if I don't ask you these questions, who is going to ask you these questions?
Yeah. And I have actually one more follow up on this on the same lines, because what trend I'm seeing is a lot of individuals are going in the consulting world, right? They're trying to become advisors. They're trying to sell their own services. How would you say maybe people in the services can think of a brand building? Because it seems like a topic ki yaar काम करते जाओ, right? The brand will follow and all that narratives. But since you have lived that life, right, building a very strong personal brand along with the company brand, in the space you're not a product selling directly. So how would you advise those people? How can they think about it?
So I think, see, it depends, right? Products and services, if there is an unmet need and you're fulfilling it the best, A, you've done your job well, that you built a good product, right? Second thing is there are different tactics for sure. Like I'm not going to not disagree with it, right? There are different tactics for B2B, there are different tactics for B2C, there are different tactics for products, different tactics for services, right? Now the thing is you have to figure out what is your GTM, right? After brand comes GTM. A lot of founders again skip GTM. They go brand and then they go channel. They go brand social, brand ye karna hai, brand ye matlab karna hai, right? They forget the main part, which is GTM, which is to understand which channel to be on, what are the consumers like on their channel, what is the behavior on that channel, is your TG even on that channel? Because like so many times I have founders come to me, कि हाँ हमें social media करना है, and I'm like, okay, what channel do you want to do social on? सब कर दो, LinkedIn कर दो, Facebook कर दो, Twitter कर दो, ये कर दो, and I'm like, but why would someone on Twitter buy your product? You have nothing relevant to say. Unless you come up with a strategy where you're like, okay, my brand is going to be super sassy about corporate politics on Twitter, and we're going to sell, say, formal workwear on Twitter. Fine,
Yeah.
cool. I agree with that. On Instagram, we're going to be very Gen Z and we're going to look very cool and we're going to talk about how to style your outfits and what are the next things happening, and you're going to be very Gen Z and cool. Great. On Facebook, however, we're going to build a community. Like, till you have that strategy in place, your channels are just a way to get to your consumer. But if you don't have that strategy in place, that what am I doing on what channel, for what purpose, for what consumer, and what is their behavior on that particular channel,
Mhm.
it's just a waste of money. It's like you're trying to throw money at the problem, hoping the problem will, run away. But that's really not how it works.
Yeah, yeah, fair point.
Yep. So, Vanshika, like going a bit off from what we're just speaking on, is there any product which you or your team has kind of named, like in B2C space,
I
like a product, like can be skincare, chocolate, anything?
I think this
I
question is Krishna. Can you repeat the question?
Acha, sure. So, while you're doing the brand building, there's also a part where, like, if there is a skincare product, you'll also suggest names on what kind of name should be there for that product, right? Is there any known product on which y'all had worked? And what was the story behind it? How did you derive that name?
There are lots. So Tots and Bubbles is one of our clients. It's in the
Hmm.
baby care space, and they really wanted something to signify that it was a bathing product and it was meant for kids and toddlers. And so we definitely did suggest one word kind of things, but they wanted to take the something and something route. They were very clear on that. So we picked the Tots and Bubbles so that it's like, okay, Tots means it's for kids, Bubbles means it's
Hmm.
for showers.
Hmm.
So we
Hmm.
stuck to that. That was one of them that we did. The recent one that we did is for a global experiential learning institute. It's called Cladio, Kladio. And we really, really racked our brains around what to call this institution, because it's coming from the from a very reputed, like it's coming from the founder of IMM. His son has started this institute, and it's a very new age global learning institute. And we really racked our brains around what do we call this thing. Like we've created the strategy of what do we name this baby, um, and I think when it comes to the naming process, something very interesting that I do is I tend to just go on YouTube or Netflix and just consume a shit ton of content. And I'll tell you the reason. The reason for that is because we are so used to thinking in a particular way that there are only certain words that strike us at a particular time. So
Mhm.
I tend to go and watch a lot of Netflix and YouTube and just watch something super random, because you never know when a word that somebody said just clicks. And I literally watch it to learn, but I also just watch it for the sake of watching it, right? And I don't know where this came from, but Claudio is inspired from the word kaleidoscope, right? The entire brand was built on the idea that every time you join hands with Claudio, you get to learn in different countries, you get a different perspective, your teachers, your professors are from different parts of the world. It's a very different take on learning, right? And Kaleidoscope kind of came about somewhere during one of these sessions that I was watching Netflix or YouTube. And from Kaleidoscope, I was like, Kaleidoscope is so beautiful because it summarizes what we're trying to say in terms of the theory of what a kaleidoscope does. And then we just kind of played around with it and just tried to shift characters around and see what we came up with. And that is really how Claudio came about as a name. And of course, I can't forget, like, there's a story behind the fingerprint labs as well. And like I said, it was me watching Netflix. We were watching Big Bang Theory, and Sheldon or something was talking about fingerprints in some episode, and I was like, wait, this makes so much sense because we're building brands that are unique, that are like unbeatable, unmatchable, something that can't be duplicated, right? So with that idea, the fingerprint kind of idea stuck in my head. Um, and then I was like, the fingerprint company sounds really lame. So I would be confused with somebody that does fingerprinting for crime or some shit. So I was like, that's a bad SEO tangent. So then I added labs in the end to show that there's always something happening, and there's always some new thing happening, and it's sort of like a chemical lab where you can see a lot of things happening. So that's how TFL also got named, which is the Fingerprint Labs, which is the company that I run.
It's just amazing how, these brand stories are created, how the names are created. Like, people just think names are born, right? But there's such a long process or a math behind getting one single name. Like, for me and Jay also, when we were building this pod, like, we've huddled over so many names, right? And then, this is one thing which I've realized: the name you like it just happens. Like you say it and it just clicks all of a sudden. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm sure
It's
you would know
always
it
in
more
the
than us
it's
because
always
you,
in the
yeah.
weirdest place. Yeah, it's always like
Hmm.
when it hits you, and then that thought never leaves
Yeah.
your mind. And that
Yeah.
is also an amazing way to check if your brand name is memorable, because the first thing that you have to do after you set a brand name is a quick test that we ask founders to do, which is
Hmm.
go talk to, like, say, three to five of your friends. Just have a normal conversation. Just call up your friend and say, "Hey, what's up? How are you? Blah blah blah." And then slowly in the conversation, just mention the name of your brand. Be like, oh, by the
Hmm.
way, I'm thinking of building this women's athleisure brand, right? And I'm thinking of calling it so and so. What do you think? How do you just have a conversation around it? Call them up 2 to 3 days later and ask them if they remember the name that you had
Uh-huh.
mentioned on the call. If they remember
Yeah.
it, that means your name is memorable. Something stuck with
Hmm.
them. It has some sort of emotional connect, right?
Hmm.
So when we do brand naming projects, right? Because when we send out proposals, we say it takes 15 days, right? And
Hmm.
15 days is not ideation. 15 days is pehle we give you five suggestions. Then we say, okay, which one out of these five did you like? Then we say, okay, did you
Hmm.
like any one of them a lot? If you liked any one of them a lot, let's just do a quick beta test. I'll call up five friends, you call up five friends.
Hmm.
Just mention this in conversation without making it obvious that you want them to remember it. And then we'll wait for 2 3 days and call them back and see if they remember it. So that's one of the
Hmm.
tests that we do. Then the second thing that we do is we ask them, like, okay, now that you know the name, can you spell it out? Because another big conversion problem is, say your name is something like very confusing. It sounds good, but you can't phonetically type it out. You're going to have a problem in SEO because nobody's going to be able to find you. So your name has to be simple enough that when you hear it, you're able to type it. Because if I hear a name and I type it wrong, I'm
Hmm.
never going to find you, right? So that's a
Hmm.
second test that we do with a brand name to check if it's actually going to stick.
Hmm.
Yep.
Yeah. This makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
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 So Vanshika, I have a different question. Okay, since you have done bunch of things even before starting the fingerprint labs, right? You have done a lot of work in content, even some part of sales. Let's say today, whatever you know, right, in the startup world or in the D2C space, if you have to pick up a career which cannot be around branding or marketing, which career would you potentially pick and why?
Um, that's a really interesting question. I never really thought about it. Um, I'm trying to think. I think I would be a really good phone call operator. I have a nice voice and I'm friendly. I think I would do well in like a, like a, but like not like a regular calling center, but like somebody who talks to like executives, like a front face of some brand, like somebody who's like not a receptionist, but somewhere between like a receptionist and a phone caller. Like I feel like I can talk to anyone on the
A very
phone.
high-end brand, maybe like Louis Vuitton or
Yeah, like a
something.
very like a Cartier or like a Burj Al Arab, like not like that, not like nothing lower than that, but like imagine if Cartier is like, here's 50 phone numbers, call them up and invite them for an event. Like I could totally do that.
Because that will be like a interesting work to do, because I think that require very special skills to deal with certain sort of cohort of people. But I
Yeah.
think this can be a fun one. And again, just a small sort of a question on top of it, right? So one brand that you really love, okay, it can be any brand, motorcycle, it can be automobile, luxury goods, anything. One brand that you absolutely love.
One brand that I absolutely love right now for sure, I am which one am I really into these days? I think Freakins is doing a really good job with their clothes. Like I have bought so much Freakins in the recent past. I think they're doing really well. I love their social media content. I think their clothes are just very cool, very usable, very trendy, and they are a brand that is. I wouldn't say they're 100% fast fashion, but at the same time they're very up to date. Like so, for example, like I buy a ton of Korean pants from them,
Mhm.
so they're doing really really well. Another brand that I also really use a lot in my house is WhatsApp Wellness. It's a long game with gummies and collagen and all of that.
Yeah.
But because I also know the founders personally, and I've really read through like their story and how they started and what are the kind of things that they're putting into their products. Like I personally use a lot of WhatsApp Wellness and really love their products. Like no complaints whatsoever.
Interesting. I think Freakins was a bit of a surprise, because that's a brand a lot of people still don't know about. So that's a pretty good one.
Yeah, yeah. Freakins has some really good
Is it?
stuff. They're doing really
No,
well.
I thought it's a
Yeah, yeah.
well-known brand. It's a
I mean,
well-known
it's still
brand.
like in the
It's
circles that.
mostly for women, I think. Maybe that's why you haven't heard of it so much.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
Freakins is doing very well.
Krishna, you have a question?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like really trendy, huh? Like just from the women's
Yeah.
perspective, whatever is trending, they kind of cover it really well. Like I remember kind of seeing this scotted kind of a trouser, which is kind of doing some rounds for at least past 6, 8 months, right? So it becomes easier. Like whatever trend you see, they normally would have it. So makes sense.
Yeah.
I
And
just
I also
wanted
think
to
like
now divert towards.
As
Uh,
an Indian brand, they're doing much better than like what an H&M or someone
Yeah.
similar could give you. I think H&M has become exorbitantly priced. What used to be कि चलो हाँ एक outfit लेके आते हैं. H&M has become
Hmm.
exorbitantly priced. Like I haven't shopped from
Hmm.
H&M in the longest. And I used to love H&M
Hmm.
in the past. Now though I'm just like
Hmm.
all about Freakins or this other brand called Little Box. They have very cute dresses and cord
It's cute.
sets. So
It's cute. Yeah.
very cute.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
cute. Yeah.
Yeah. I like New Me also. Like, okay, but yeah, like I like
New
New Me
Me,
also.
I I like that they're nice stuff, but I never like the quality of their product. I shouldn't be saying this on a live
Yeah.
channel, but the quality of their product is so bad.
Hmm.
Like I would never buy
Okay.
from there.
Yeah.
Maybe they can
I'm
give
just
like a.
going to move.
It can
No,
be
but
like
I
a
think
custom.
that is the concept, no? It's like quick fashion. The concept itself is quick fashion, wear and throw kind of a
Hmm.
logic. Yeah. But I think
Yeah.
more set for the Gen Z makes more sense for them at this point in time. I wanted to kind of ask you a question about the events which happen across every industry, right? Like in B2B space, we have our own events. Like in D2C space, you were just in an event, I guess, yesterday, right? How are these
Wednesday.
events playing a role? Yeah. Oh, acha. How are these events kind of playing a role in building a brand? Like, are these really helping or are these just gimmicky? Like, direct, straight question to you. What is
No,
your take on it?
no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. So I think first of all, these events help you to meet the right people, right? Like you meet founders, you actually understand their mindset, you understand what are the struggles that they are going through, right? And that really helps with kind of understanding what the current scenarios are. So every time I go there, the first thing I do is like obviously go meet friends, but then I actually go and have these very deep, interesting conversations with founders to be like, what is this thing that you're struggling with? Have you been struggling with Instagram? Why are you struggling? How is your content going? Like, what do you think of your brand? How are you building brand? So I think just it gives you sort of dipstick and a really uh, on time in that moment kind of an answer from founders who are living and breathing brands nowadays, right? And are doing it every single day. Because see, I as a brand strategist have knowledge, but I also want to make the knowledge that I have very usable. To make it usable, I have to understand what is really happening on the ground, right? So these events are a great place because founders are also obviously very busy people, right? Like I might say, chalo, matlab, say I know 100, 200 founders, out of which 20, 30 might actually just take my call and answer those hard questions. But at an event, they're more chill, they're more likely to chat with you, they're more likely to open up. It's a little bit of a casual setting. So at the last event, I met a founder friend who I've been chatting with for like maybe 4 years, 5 years. We have each other's numbers. Like we're very chill, like very, very old friends. He's Arush from Just Herbs. He's based out of Chandigarh. So obviously we never really got to meet. And he was in Delhi NCR for that Inc. 42 event. And I finally got to meet him. And it was so nice. It was so heartwarming to kind of just finally put a face, to the name. And another friend that I just made was Zapfresh's founder. He was at the event, Dipanshu Manchanda. Very, very solid guy, super fun to talk to. And he was just trying to explain to me, like, my debate with him was you're in a market that is very saturated, maybe price conscious. There's not much differentiation. How do you build a brand? Because I wanted to hear what he's doing. So Zapfresh basically is basically just a meat kind of similar, meat trading, and they go through meat shops and sell meat, right? So there's not too much innovation that can happen there. There is obviously like thoda bahut to hai, but it's not like there's something crazy new that they've created. So really interesting conversation with him around how to create a brand that is going to go mass market where there's no very big product differentiation, and how do you build moats so that investors actually come to you and want to invest in your business. Like what are you giving them as like, this is my value that I'm giving you, and I know that the more I do of this with more money, the more it will multiply, right? So that was my conversation with him. Really, really interesting. Zach Fresh's founder. um, and then I had another conversation with Anuj from Bakabuki, and they were on that list as well. They ranked, I think, I just posted it on my Instagram. They ranked 31. And I asked him, and I'm like, sneakers is becoming so cluttered as a category, right? Like, what is your real differentiation? How are you retaining? Are you focusing on loyalty? What does loyalty mean to you? How often does a customer buy a sneaker from you? How long does your sneakers last? How do you convince them that they need to buy a new one? So just really interesting conversations on very different topics, right? So Arush and Just Herbs, we were talking about like how do you scale a brand enough to make it sell out, right? They sold out to Marico. So I was asking like, what is it that you really did? What is the grunt work? Like, what do brands really need to do nowadays to be able to even think of having a sellout? So three very, very different conversations and plenty more different conversations that happened. And while they are friends with me, they have my number, we're chill, we talk all the time. But like these conversations are a little hard to have on a call, right? Versus when you meet them face to face and you can just have a very open, honest, raw, unfiltered conversation. I think nothing like it.
Yeah, this we also agree. Like, so on the TA side, there are a lot of events which kind of happen. We also kind of go to a lot of events. So, like you said, right, we know a lot of CHROs, etc., etc., and maybe we're in touch, but phone pe wo connect ही नहीं हो पा रहा है, right? But when you're meeting them face to face, it's like a all new journey. You will sometimes, get the best advices which you may have not got otherwise. With this, I just
Yeah.
had one more question around mentoring. You yourself do a lot of mentoring, right? And you mentioned how a mentor impacted your journey of becoming a founder. Simple question. How do you find the right mentor?
How do you find the right mentor? Um, I wrote about this on my LinkedIn a couple of months ago, and I still stick by it because I really feel like that is the truest advice that I could give somebody on how to find a mentor. A lot of times people are wrong. They feel that a mentor is supposed to guide them to their best path or their best potential, or like it's almost like you're expecting that the mentor has some magic trick that you want the mentor to give you, and you're going to convert into this second awesome person. But that notion in itself is so wrong, because I've realized with Saurabh and I, and he's been my mentor now for almost 5 years. Saurabh and I are a great pair because I'm not expecting him to change my path or give me some new advice or tell me something that be like, Acha, ye brand chhod do, now jump into this. Like, he would never say that. And that's what I love
Hmm.
about him, because I can go to him just being really honest and being like, this is what I want to do. How do I get there? A good mentor is somebody that walks the path with you and takes you on that path with them. It's a hand in hand relationship. A mentor is not somebody who's supposed to be like, oh, you're doing this, but you should do this instead, because that's not truly what you want to do. I think a good mentor is somebody who understands you, your skill set, your strengths, your weaknesses, and helps you do what you want to do. I think that is number one. Second thing, a good mentor is somebody who I feel has been there, done that, but is still figuring it out. Right? I think Saurabh has been there, done that, when he's also still figuring out other things, right? Because I feel like if your mentor is, say, 2 to 3 levels higher than you, say, for example, I got like CEO of Mintra to be my mentor, their mindset is completely different, right? And
Yeah.
me asking them questions on how do I close a client, how do I upsell this, how, like, they won't be able to help me because their mindset is now one and done, and they finished that 0 to 1 journey. Now they're on their 10 to 100 journey, right?
Yeah.
So if you are in a 10 to 100 journey, find a mentor on a 10 to 100 journey. If you're in the 0 to 1, find a mentor who's maybe not 0 to 1 but 1 to 5, right? So that you also learn while they are also learning, and you have similar experiences. The overlap of experiences is really important, and experiences in the near past, right? Because like I said, if I get the CEO of Mintra to say mentor me, I don't think his or her advice might be 100% actionable, 100% usable, 100% realistic, because they're not in that mind frame. And it's unfair for me to expect that from my mentor, right? He or she might be able to give me aspirations, being like, oh, if you do this, then this will happen. That is great, that is also important, but that's not a mentor. That's somebody who I have as a trusted advisor. So a mentor is really somebody who has to have done the same journey as you, have to align with what do you want and how do they help you get there along with them. And I think, I mean, the most important thing I feel personally between Saurabh and I is that we really appreciate and we love and we talk about each other with so much pride. Like for example, Claudio had a grand launch in end of February, and obviously we were behind it. I got on stage, talked about how we did the branding and all of that. And then Saurabh actually put a post up about me saying that, this is somebody that I mentored and I'm really proud of her. And I didn't I didn't ask him to or anything. I mean, that was truly like just very heartwarming that, um, your mentor appreciates you, because a lot of times mentorship can be quite emotionally draining, right? Because when people think of a mentor, they also think of somebody who's going to throw a lot of advice at them that they have to take and then use. But that's never been the case with Saurabh and I. With Saurabh and I, it's always been a very friendly relationship, right? So the other day we were texting and I was like, hey, what are you doing? I'm feeling kind of low. I'm thinking if this is something I should do. And he's like, okay, do these 5 things, check if it's working, then decide what you want to do. So that's what I mean by like very real, actionable, friendly advice, and somebody who you can just have like the high conversation with and the low conversation with.
Yeah.
Because when things are low, you need a mentor to help get you out of that rut.
Hmm.
When things are high, they need to help to kind of bring you back down to reality and give you ideas on how to sustain
Yeah.
and pinch of reality. So I think Saurav does that exceptionally well,
Hmm.
and really, really grateful to have him in my life.
Yeah.
I hope more people get mentors like yours, that'll kind of help them in their journey as well. Hoping that on today's call.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I think a lot of people have also asked me, right? Like when we do this small talks conversation, why not to bring in the very big people, right? I mean, we have seen a lot of interviews of Kunal Shah and a lot of people at his level, right? But the kind of mentorship or the guidance that they have is not applicable to 99% of people, right? Which is something they are not in that same playing field. And that's why the idea was also to bring out the stories where people relate to these individuals and they can think, okay, if they are there, I can potentially be somewhere closer to that. And that has been a constant focus to bring out the stories of individuals who are, let's say, not too ahead in the game, that you just completely can't relate to that because people just take the
Yeah.
advice. I remember one of the
Yeah.
conversation Kunal said, take risk, right? But again, who need to take the risk? That's very important. कि तुम कौन से life के
Mm,
step and
Yeah.
what sort of risk you will take. You can't like just be the risk लूंगा आज उठ के. So I think thanks for putting that point out, and that's the
no
reason we
worries.
do it
Yeah.
that way. So I have two quick questions, Vanshika, for the day. One is that you run a fairly larger online community, right? And community has become like the next like a normal thing now. Everybody wants to spin up a community these days. Uh, Specifically in the online community, like how have you thought of it, and how can people keep it more real, authentic with their users, or like with the members? What has been your observation in that?
Yeah. Do you want a hard truth or do you want a very easy, happy-go-lucky answer?
Only
I
hard.
think
Only hard truth.
the
Only
tough
hard
love.
truths? Tough love?
Yeah.
Tough love, unpopular opinion is that I feel a lot of people are losing their authenticity and who they are to the algorithm. Um, Two things, right? Number one, what you consume is what sticks in your head and then impacts your thoughts and your vision on the world, right? Number two, what you're creating for your users is going to then impact the next 100 people that watch it. So I think a lot of people, unfortunately, especially in the personal branding space, have lost their essence of who they really are and what do they really stand for. And it is very easy to get caught in that trap on social media, right? Because you consume so much, you're like, oh, this person is doing this thing, I should do this thing. Oh, this reel idea is really good, let me copy it, right? So if you're constantly just trying to be somebody on social media who's known, and you're trying to build a social media that is not truly authentically you, it's going to catch up with you in some time or the other. I think that is one of the biggest pitfalls of social media and community building. Second thing is, if you're building a community, it's a lot of work. I have a community on WhatsApp that I run, which has almost 600 people in it. And I'm super active there because it's my community. If I don't run it, who will? If I don't start a conversation, who will? There's only so much banter that people have to say on their on WhatsApp. So if it's a silent group, like, I go in there and I start conversations that people want to hear about. So as a community manager myself, I have a community of 600. I still make it a point that everybody interacts at some point. I know who are the lurkers, I know who are the power users, I know who they are one on one. Out of that group, there have been so many subgroups that have been started. Like, some have me, some don't even have me, and I'm okay with that. It's not that you're part of my community, oh, you can't be chatting with X other person, right? But community building is really a true work of love and attention and dedication, because if you're not going to run your community like as if it's a baby, it's not going to run. It's just going to be a stagnant place that nobody really goes to. And that's probably the worst thing. You don't want that at all. Nobody wants a community that is stagnant and has no activity, right? Your community is thriving and growing only when there is activity on the chats and in the messages, right? Um, I think two lessons is, one, don't lose yourself in the social media mix. And number two is, if you are actually building a community, do it with love, with dedication, with attention. Because as the community grows, right, your first 100 will bring in your next 100, will bring in your next 100. And you will see that J curve happening, the hockey stick curve. But for that to happen, you have to be inputting enough into the community that others have good things to say about it. If you're
Yeah.
not doing that, then you're probably doing something wrong.
Yep, absolutely. I think community building is one of the hardest thing I think someone can do, and kudos to people who do it. Like slow but steady, right? Matlab, there is no rush to like get
Yeah,
Yeah.
there.
yeah, it's always a slow game, always a slow game. I mean,
Yeah.
I've started writing a newsletter to founders every 15th of the month. And The barrier that I've used is that this founder, whoever it is, has come to talk to me once at least. So it's
Okay.
not strangers. I'm not publicizing it as a join this list, give me your email ID. But actually, people who I have talked to, people who've interacted with me, who have booked calls with me, and then I add them onto this email list once a month. Very simple, like one concept on branding, and then a small update on what's happening at TFL. That's it, and that's more than enough. Like, I think in some shape, size, or form, I'm adding value to them, and that's what matters to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And Vanshika, last one for the day, right? So since we all are learning, right, in our own journeys, let's say if we go back, to your journey, and if there is somebody who's just 22 today, if you are to give them like two, three, principles or like pieces of work ethics that they can probably pick up early in their career, versus we might have learned it little hard way. So what will be the two, three truths that you learned hard way that somebody can just start today?
Yeah, um, I think the first thing is acknowledge that you don't know everything. Because if you're going to go into a room being super confident that you know what it is, what to do, what should be done, you're going to go wrong. Number one is acknowledge that you don't know everything, and that in itself is a powerful statement, right? Because when you acknowledge that is only when you start learning and growing as an individual and evolving into a better being. The second thing is, I think learning never stops, right? If you feel like, oh, I've got a great job, now I don't need to learn anymore, you're highly mistaken. Like, it's a question that I ask myself every Sunday. What did I learn new this week? What new thing did I do for my customers? How am I making their life easier, better, faster, quicker, whatever it is, right? Learning is definitely constant. Third thing I would suggest to somebody who's new in a job is to be very careful of who you put in your inner circle, your mentors, your advisors, your friends, right? Because as you grow as an adult, right, and everybody's always constantly growing, but what's happening is other people's impressions or other people's POVs tend to seep into your life, and you don't want to have negatives of that, right? You want the right people to give you the right advice at the right time and really have your back, वो जो मतलब those friends who have your back and those advisors and mentors. I think that's really important.
Hmm.
And I think the last one that I would say to people who are just about starting out or are new in their careers, do something for yourself every week. I cannot tell you how good you'll feel about yourself, right? I think work is 9 to 5, you are paid 9 to 5, you do your 9 to 5, and then do something that truly makes your heart happy, like be it painting, running, cooking, reading, whatever it is. If you're going to lose that one thing about yourself because you've gotten too busy with work, that means you need to rebalance your life, right? Like, having too much work or having no time to do anything of your own is a big red flag, because you need to spend time on yourself. You need to just be with yourself and do whatever makes your heart happy, right? Be it go play paddle, go get coffee with a friend, right? If you're missing out on these life's moments, you're actually doing something wrong, because you feel like you're chasing your career and career is the only most important thing. But then you realize that, oh, you've become the CEO and you have nobody around you, right? It's almost like, imagine you become the CEO and there's nobody clapping for you, right? Not even yourself, because you've lost yourself in the mix. So
Ouch.
every weekend, just, yeah, go spend time on yourself. Do something that you feel happy about. Do something that makes you feel good. Even if it sounds ridiculous, right? Yesterday I had this freak thought that I'm going to spend 10,000 bucks on myself in April. I was like, I haven't done anything for myself in a really long, like, I was, as in, like, high expense wala saman, like, low, like shopping and stuff I've done. Like, I do shopping, I do this, I do that, I go, I do a bunch of things, but I
Yeah,
haven't done something expensive for myself. So I was like, maybe in April, I'm just gonna blow up 10,000 and do something that I don't even know what I'm going to do, but
yeah,
I just want to blow up
Hmm.
10,000 bucks because I want to. Like, I am blessed, and I'm blessed, that's what, to be able to even say that. But
yeah.
I don't know what I want to do, but I know I want to blow it up on myself. मैं कुछ करूंगी. I don't even know what it is. Like, maybe it is to go to some like really expensive hair spa. I don't even know. I'm probably gonna get gypped for it. I don't even know at this point. But like, who knows? I might just go and get like a hair spa thing and like spend 5 hours at a hair salon. I don't even know. I'm okay with that. But I feel like some more, more and more I've started to realize that paying importance to yourself, doing things for yourself, rewarding yourself, appreciating yourself, loving yourself are more important than the other career achievements that will keep happening. We're not in a rat race like we were in the 90s. If you're not happy, you're not going to do a great job at work either. So focus on your happiness, and then the rest will all just follow.
I
Yeah.
think I couldn't agree more. I think the in the last episode, Muns, who was here, he mentioned the third point exactly, that look for the people you chill with, because that's gonna in a way define you. That the people you're gonna hang out with, you might potentially become one of those. So
Yeah,
just be very mindful of the people you chill with. So I think it's
absolutely.
important one. But Vanshika, thanks a lot for doing this. I think this 1 hour just passed away in like a conversation,
Yeah.
and I'm sure a lot of people would have got value out of in the brand space, not just that, but as an individual, what they can just do to have a good life. So thanks for doing this. Really appreciate it.
I'm glad. I'm glad. Thank you so much for having me. And I hope whoever watches this, whenever later, they really do take away nuggets of information. And I hope something that I said today sticks in your mind and makes you make that change in yourself or in your work or in your career
Yeah.
or anything. Because if you're not constantly changing, you're doing something wrong.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
I think
Thanks for
you've
having
ended it
me.
with a
Thanks,
nice
Krishna.
line. Thank you so much. Let's end the stream.
Yeah. You
Yeah.
just